Howdy, folks. Matt here with BionDnD. A couple of weeks ago, we had a session with the remote group, the Siege Breakers, and we had some audio issues. The session was streamed. You can check it out on Twitch for at least a little while longer if you want to. But the first 50 minutes have no audio from anybody but me because the source was configured wrong in OBS. Uh, and then the second part of that, and there's like an intermission, and then the second section of the actual stream. Those are fine for the players, but my audio is coming in a little bit echoey and distant. That's also the case for the first 50 minutes. But yeah, long story short, I didn't want to put something with that poor audio quality up on YouTube. It was basically irredeemable. I'm no sound engineer, but listening to it, I was like, yeah, I can't salvage this. The sound on my end was just too low signal to noise already. Um, what I did want to do is run through a bit of a recap of the session with you. Just kind of do a little me reading out, for lack of a better word, what happened. So I've got my notes here in front of me. And the session began with a little bit of an in-character chat between Wartalk and Ilya, where Wartalk was kind of catching Ilya up on kind of what they've learned about the history of the world in the time that the Siegebreakers were adventuring before Ilya joined up. And this is all I copied this down like transcripted from the Discord conversation where this was happening. So this is all like word for word what he was saying, and it's fun. All right, so okay, so there was a scouring, and it was like bad, I think, and then people forgot how to read and write. Well, it just went away, I guess. But then people still knew, but they didn't know, and nobody knows how it started. It just sort of came from somewhere and went whoosh, breaking crap, and it was generally considered bad. Also, some people got lazy and forgot to fix buildings. People weren't really racist anymore, though, because they were all like, dang, stuff's bad. You want to be around the bad stuff together? And everybody was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Okay, well, don't get me wrong, people are still racist and xenophobic, but, it's not as bad as it could be, so that's good, I think. Torm, your daddy, I mean father, came about, and a few others that I forget about because I was focused on your father, dad, god guy. Jeff interjects here with Wartalk, I'm not sure teaching is your calling. And Wartalk says, do you want to take over, Jeff? Ilya says, okay, listen, there's my father, and then there's Sky Daddy. Jeff, no. And Wartalk comes back with, so anyway, the Three Kingdoms came about, and there's the Coastal Duchy that's small and the coolest because it's water, so obviously it's the best. There's the Grasslands Duchy. Oh, all of this is about Erevar, by the way. So the Grasslands Duchy is larger, and there's grass. Then there's a river, one that's by the river, and Shadra, RIP, is from there, so that's where the capital is, and that's cool. Uh, Dane is, they're the bad guys, so know that first. They still have lords and stuff, but they don't have the kind of coordination Erevar has. The frickin' nerds. They've got a lot of infighting, but really they just care about who's the ballsiest, biggest, toughest leader guy. Oh, and there's Eaglin. They're brutes and awesome. Everybody loves them until they raid you. Anyway, I kind of blacked out. Eaglin is super smart, though, and they're really good with mechanical bits and all, and that's super cool. They do some crazy stuff over there. So anyway, there's Three Kingdoms, and they've been trying to come back from the big whoosh scouring thing, and there haven't really been wars, which is cool. But then Dane went like, herder, I want to own everything. And Jeff kind of, Wartalk, how much have you had to drink this morning? Morning? Anyway, so Dane started fighting Erevar. So they were having the Duke's moot, and we were around kind of sort of then. And it was a wild time. We fought a suit of armor, and I tried to blind it with a blanket. That didn't work. Turns out they don't need to see much. Jeff is kind of. Yeah, he almost died for that. We're talking totally worth it. So, Pentrim, our bro, teleported a bunch of people, but he didn't teleport his own right hand. And now the war is sort of slow because nobody wants to do anything in the cold, I assume, I guess. I don't really know, war that much. Oh, and there's a giant Chaos Incarnate thing that we're trying to put away slash kill and all that. We'll see. And okay, so although they weren't actually related in the Discord chat, these were the next two lines that were still from Nick, Wartalk's player, and the fact that they followed it up was just beautiful, so I'll read the three in a row. Oh, and there's this giant Chaos Incarnate thing we're trying to put away or kill, and I don't know, we'll see. Man, I thought I was a booze connoisseur. This man is on a whole nother level. I like the implication that Hronglathor is just an alcoholic. So after the summary for Ilia's sake, Wartalk and Jeff found an alchemist, who was actually the one that those two lines were about. But this alchemist is, skilled in many arts, and Wartalk and Jeff ask him to make bombs for Jeff, because Jeff wants to be a little bit more effective at range, and he thinks throwing a bomb is a good way to get him that effectiveness. So they commission this alchemist to make those for him, leaving him with half the payment up front and instructions on exactly what he wants, and they resolve to return the following day to collect the finished product. Uh, Meanwhile, Kyanna is meditating in the grasslands. She's spending her requisite time in her circle terrain to gain her circle spells. And in this time where she's spending in the grasslands meditating, she's also working on her resilience to her fear of fire via microdosing Nightshade. I don't recommend this, by the way. Uh, even like the smallest doses give like 4-day trips that are really really horrifying and awful. Don't do it. But she microdoses and she transforms into her Eladrin summer form. And also while she's out there, she's kind of thinking over the progress she has made with the reincarnate spell and kind of the wall she has hit with it, and being somewhat in touch with the goddess of death, decides to kind of seek guidance from the Raven Queen and ask if there is anything that the Raven Queen can tell her. And the Raven Queen effectively responds with, "You know this is my domain. You know that this is the next step you have to take, and trust me." Basically. I guess if you haven't seen previous sessions, part of the spell research that Kyanna has to do to discover, for lack of a better term, it kind of is discover. The player has knowledge that the spell exists, but the character is just kind of fumbling about in the dark, thinking like there has to be something. We know there's something weird going on with death. Maybe we can bring people back. And as part of the research for the spell Reincarnate, when speaking with the Ulvari, they basically said you might have to die to learn how this spell will work, to get that final bit of information and figuring out how all the pieces fit together. So that's fun. Ilia, while Kyanna's doing all of this, is searching for clues as to her father's whereabouts, and she finds a woman praying before a shrine to Torm. She prays with the woman, and the woman prays for her husband, which during the prayer it is revealed he is currently out fighting the war with Dane. And she also prays for strength for herself and for protection for the people of the city. She has recently joined the city guard, and she's praying for the strength to be able to perform that office with strength and poise, and protect the people in the city that has done so much for her throughout her life. After they finish praying, she introduces herself to Ilia as Amelia, and Ilia immediately is, after having prayed with her and kind of building up this quick rapport, launches into asking about her father, who, also being a follower of Torm, she reasons Amelia might have seen him. So she gives him the name and shows him a picture in a locket that she holds. Shows her a picture of him in a locket that she holds. And Amelia does indeed recognize Gerald, and tells Ilya as much, and says that, she and her husband hosted Gerald for a little while he was in Limna, staying there. She and Gerald also restored the shrine that they had just prayed to together. And while he had been there, Gerald had been uh, looking around, asking the various priests in town about an artifact or something. She was fuzzy on the details. But the sum total of it was that Gerald was given direction to go to a monastery to Torm in the eastern reaches of the Ulvengart range. So, that's most of Ilya's time this day. Wartok and Jeff the next day return to collect their bombs, and they find out that the alchemist had a rather bad accident while concocting them. He's burned himself very badly, and he's kind of he's a little bit, I don't want to say doped up, but kind of is doped up on Poppy's milk. Kind of a little opiate to dull the pain. But he's an alchemist, so it's fine, right? He knows what he's doing, or something. Wartok provides him with a little something extra to take the edge off, slipping him a dose of marijuana. Also, you could tell that we all do the hardcore drugs because we talk about marijuana in doses. Anyway, after paying the due balance, they receive Jeff's bombs and head out. They go towards the Luminaire Academy, where before they had met with Anakim. Um, they hope to get updates on the research Anakim has been doing with the Annulus, and also Kyanna wants to call in a favor. She thinks that she's witnessed now the teleportation spell by what Pentram was able to do, and also teleportation circles with how the Ulvari were able to kind of transport them back into the Grasslands Duchy. Um, and she wonders if the same thing could be done, but given her kind of bent as a druid, she wonders if it could be done with plants. Now, the spell in Rules as Written is called Transport via Plants. It's a little on the nose. So in my world, it's called Floral Conduit, and so, or it will be. So she asks the Luminaire Academy if they would be willing to start the research on that spell and begin kind of trying to discover the mechanisms by which that might work, especially given aid from the Ulvari with their ability to make teleportation circles once they arrive. Anakim believes this may be a little bit out of their purview. They might not be able to complete the spell, but they can certainly give it a shot, and they can certainly start working on it. So he agrees. On to the next bit of business. He's very excited to tell them about what he's found with the Annulus. So, as he was working with it, he was able to, kind of do a series of tests and figure out that as it stood, it would not respond to any kind of divination magic. It didn't appear magical at all. But in his mind, this just didn't add up. There had to be something more than just a key, because all he really knows is, like, these are the way to get into the reliquary that hold these immensely powerful weapons that were literally the cause of sealing away a great evil. He wasn't alive at the time. Most people don't know much at all about this. So all he can piece together is that, you wouldn't put just a normal key in the door to the most powerful weapon imaginable. So he figures they have to be magical somehow. And maybe it's just not showing itself. So he gets the other professors of the Luminaire Academy around, and they all work together to try and break whatever enchantment might be on this. And lo and behold, they succeed. And the enchantment is broken, and it turns out that the Annuli are shielded from divination magic. They cannot be located, they cannot be detected as magical. Those kinds of spells simply bounce off of them. And once they were able to break this enchantment, then they were able to kind of hone in on the magical signature given off by this Annulus. It is similar enough to the relic weapons, that he surmises that that is why that small thread appeared on the map of the relic weapons. There was an 11th line, 10 of them pointing to where the relic weapons should have been, and an 11th one that just kind of went off screen, quote unquote. And he was able to figure out that, this was because that annulus must have been, the shielding on it must have been deteriorated somehow. Maybe it's not completely broken, or maybe it's just that, the dowsing rod that they were using wasn't tuned well enough to the annulus. So, now that they have an annulus whose shielding from divination magic has been broken, he can kind of reconfigure the dowsing rod to tune it to the signature, the magical signature of the annulus that they have on hand. After having done this, he confirms his theory by using the dowsing rod again and finding that indeed that 11th line is reduced to a point. It shows exactly where the object is on the map. Again, it's kind of more like a dot matrix of points that roughly shape the continent and the surrounding lands. But it's enough that, he can overlay an actual map and figure out where it is. And so he points them to one of the islands in the kind of northern part of the Great Darren Delta, the kind of marshlands and small island series that spread across eastern Dane and Erevar, at the mouth of the Great Darren River. So, relaying this information to him, he says he has no idea how this other annulus might have had its shielding broken. It could be something just like a magical eddy or a freak event that disturbed the magic and weakened it. It could have just been time, or it could be something as sinister as someone has found it and begun experimenting with it. There's no way to tell, but he can locate it. So, after relaying that information to them, the Siegebreakers decide it is time to head out on their way. They go towards the monastery in the Ulvengart range, where Ilya believes the next clue to her father may lie, and where Wartok and Kayana were given to believe by one of the Ulvari there may be people who can help them alleviate Jeff's issue. So, they head out, and on their first day of traveling, they meet a performing group that is traveling on the road in the opposite direction of them. The lute player, a bard of quite a bit of skill, plays for them an inspiring tune, which invigorates the party, leaves them feeling refreshed and revitalized. Basically, they get some temp HP that doesn't go away on long rests, just once it's been taken down. On the second day, the Siegebreakers come across a heavily flooded river. Wartok, ecstatic at the opportunity to swim, just dives right in. Kayana wild shapes into a giant eagle and carries Ilya. Wartok casts Fly on Jeff and Clanky to allow them to cross easily. So we have a flying eagle carrying Ilya, and a magically flying giant metal shield guardian who I imagine just frickin' T-posing across the river, and a flying dragonborn. Wartok, while swimming, sees some gleaming white and silver objects at the bottom of the river. He dives down to retrieve them, swims to the other side, and kind of coming out on the other shore, spills them down onto the floor or onto the ground to look at them closer. And the group discovers that they are in fact dragon scales from a white and a silver dragon. Relatively young dragons. I don't know if they deduced it or if I just told them that out of character, but relatively younger dragons. The scales are not as tough as the scales of an adult yet. And after some looking around and not seeing any dragons about or anything that looks like it might be a dragon's roost, they deduce that it probably flowed downriver quite a ways, perhaps even from as far off as the Ulvengart range, which may very well be where this stream originates. Jeff, on this same day, finds himself just ravenously hungry. He can't really go on. He needs to stop, find some food, and eat. So he hunts for food and finds a deer, brings it down, cooks it up deliciously for himself and the rest of the party to eat together. The next day, the weather begins to warm, and Kyanna kind of basks in these early signs of seed sprout. For the first time in many weeks, she hears a voice that she had nearly forgotten. The voice of Auril, the goddess of seasons and the harvest in this world. She speaks with Auril for a little while, finding out that Auril is weaker in the winter generally, but especially in this world that has been scoured and separated from the other planes the way it has been. Auril's influence is almost non-existent in the winter, but as the world is warming up towards spring, Kyanna is able to hear some of Auril's first words in the new season. While Kyanna is chatting with Auril and Jeff is being a third eye, Wartok and Kyanna are kind of conversing, and they're a little bit, worried about them. Jeff is going crazy, and Kyanna's just talking to the air, and Ilya's like, y'all need Torm. Y'all motherfuckers need Jesus. So, as that day nears its end, they are traveling on the road when one of them, I believe it was Wartok, spots a small chest under a tree by the road. Investigating it, he finds no traps, no sign of anyone nearby who might be the owner, so he picks the lock and pops it open, and inside is a simple, small golden ring. Just a plain band. So he's kind of looking around the chest, trying to figure out like what this might be, and it seems like it's been there for a little while, maybe a few years, and it's been opened in that time. He can see that like the hinges are not as rust worn as he might expect if it had just sat there. There is dust on some parts of it, but not on like where you would put less dust, where you would put like your hands to open it, and like on the top of the chest itself. And these are kind of just increasing and increasing the mystery the more he's finding out about this chest, until he figures, and turns out rightly so, that perhaps this chest is just a piece with some sentimental value to somebody from a nearby town. And he decides that they should probably leave it alone. Set the ring back in it, close the lid back, and just, let it be. And out of character, I did give them some confirmation of this. The ring, I rolled this on a random events table. The ring was effectively left there by, well, I rolled on a random events table. It did not tell me all of this. I was like, well, there's got to be some reason for this to be there. So what I came up with was there's a nearby hamlet where a man had recently, not too recently, a few years ago, lost his wife. And as a sort of commemoration of her life, he put her wedding ring inside a small chest and set it underneath of the tree where they shared their first kiss. He comes back to it every now and then, opens it up, sees the ring, and is reminded of their time together. And that's basically the story around it, which Wartok didn't, know in character, but basically guessed at. And that was our session. So, yeah, I mean, it was a fun one. It was good. The audio issues were unfortunate, but what can you do except get good? Which I'm working on it. We've had some changes in the tech setup recently, so I'm still kind of adapting to those. But hopefully, they will be smoothed out by the start of this next session, which will be. Let's see, today is the 5th, and it is a Wednesday. So in 6 more days, on the 11th. Yeah, that's how math works. On the 11th, we'll be streaming this group again. In the meanwhile, look for, well, obviously this video on YouTube, and then there will also be the upload of last week's session on YouTube in the next couple of days. So, thank you guys very much for joining me for this recap, and may all your rolls be lucky.